A lot of times you rely on a lot of reporting, with market reporting from your Circanas and Nielsen's, whether it's your own depletions or sales reporting as well that you get numbers from. But imagine if you're able to combine different data sets, look for patterns that maybe you can't find easily, and allow you to make recommendations on where to focus, which SKU to focus, which brand, which market. If you're dealing with a distributor, can you have better conversations where your recommendations resonate more because you have more access to data that you couldn't process before because it was too large or too time consuming? But now you're able to look for patterns and anomalies that allow you to improve your storytelling. So imagine your pitches can be a lot more targeted, more data centric, and less more about guesses.
So we are about to kickstart this fantastic webinar. We have Sam here, Sam Wong from Mark Anthony Group. He leads the data and AI there. Sam, thanks for joining and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So Sam, with that, thank you so much for doing this. Once again, for folks who are listening, who are just getting to know you, could you just introduce yourself and also your role at Mark Anthony Group and your journey of AI?
So I'm with Mark Anthony Group. So we are in the beverage industry, obviously, brands like White Claw and Mike's Hard, as well as wineries in British Columbia. I oversee the data and AI engineering, architecture, and innovation practice. So I've spent almost 5 years focusing on, developing the data platform to support all our data and AI initiatives across all of the companies. And one of the biggest things has been AI innovation. So spending time building an incubator that's now become an AI factory, and basically delivering data and AI solutions in every part of the business: sales, marketing, supply chain, finance, compliance, you name it, in our wineries, in our breweries. So every part of our company is, using data and AI in different manners.
Super. Thank you so much for that. So just a little bit more about, your role, particularly what is the objective that you've been, let's say, hired for, and what are you aiming to achieve there?
It started, again, setting the foundation, modernizing what we are using data and potentially analytics and AI for. And now it's, we've been running a lot with a lot of AI innovation and a lot of AI pilots to production. But at the end of the day, the data that's needed to power those solutions is very important, equally important. And we don't do one without the other, for sure. Again, as we're growing in terms of what we're able to deliver in terms of meeting a business objective in all of those different departments and different parts of the company, it's gone quite rapid over the last couple of years.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive right into the first question. What does AI transformation mean for a beverage business? And as I was chatting, we are in the context of a small to medium-sized sort of business. So what do you think that means to, that sort of company?
Well, first off, I'd say we want to be honest with ourselves. Like, there's a FOMO, a fear of missing out on AI, right? There's this talk like, oh, I should be doing this with AI, or should be saying we're AI driven or AI enabled or whatever. And nobody wants to be left behind. And I think for smaller, medium-sized businesses, there's a fear that it's really the enterprises, they have the funding to do it. But I want to say that that's not the case. Transformation isn't about a check mark. It's not saying, oh, I have this software in my portfolio or I'm doing this. But really, it's actually transforming how you look at your own business and where data and AI can accelerate what may have been done a certain way or a certain approach, or what couldn't be done before, now can accelerate in driving new business outcomes in your particular workflow or business processes. So that's how I look at AI transformation. It's not about technology. It's more about how do I transform my business where AI plays a role, not to necessarily replace people, but to be a co-pilot, if you will, or an assistant or a partner in your journey.
Fantastic. I'm sure we're going to go through those business objectives that AI can solve, and that will give us more idea as well. Let's go here. Practical ways a beverage business can use AI today. So there's a lot of misconception here. So give us some real cases that you've already seen people using it.
I'll try to stay first, in this topic more about some of the more very hands-on, practical, day-to-day capabilities. I think one of them that's very interesting is marketing. It used to be that you have to rely on brand like agencies for a lot of things, right? And or you have to outsource a lot of things because you don't have either the ability to hire full-time, whether it's social media, whether it's graphic design. And now it's easier and easy to experiment, with image generation, creative content that maybe you can now do 90% of it yourself. And maybe it's the final 10% that requires that handoff and polish and production. Even video content has come a long way in the last 2 years, where it's really forcing even agencies how they are deployed. So I think marketing and creatives is definitely one that applies to every size. It allows you to do things maybe you couldn't do that you could. And I think that's one thing with AI is it's making it more available for the end consumer to use. On the sales side, I think this is one of the biggest capabilities, and we'll probably touch on it a little bit later about some other use cases, but even helping a sales rep prepare for a visit, right? Using AI as another copywriter, as an editor, as a optimizer of my notes, of my emails, of my, opportunities, right? So AI isn't doing the job of the sales rep. We're not getting rid of sales rep because of AI, but now the sales reps can actually do more, be more efficient, be more effective, maybe hit the notes that they need to resonate with their customers. So AI really is that partner in crime in different roles, and not just marketing or sales, but finance. For sure, more things you can automate, like invoice processing is a great example. Compliance, doing research. You're able to find things a lot faster that allows you to improve your workflow.
On the sales part here, I know that we'll go through some use cases, but what are the, let's say, objectives that you see that, AI can improve the sales and growth?
Both data and AI together is really empowering way more deeper research into your data, your market, and being able to combine those data sets a lot more easily in your decision making. So I'll give an example, right? So a lot of times you rely on a lot of reporting, whether with market reporting from your Circanas and Nielsen's, whether it's your own depletions or sales reporting as well that you get numbers from. But imagine if you're able to combine different data sets, look for patterns that maybe you can't find easily, and allow you to make recommendations on where to focus, which SKU to focus, which brand, which market. If you're dealing with a distributor, can you have better conversations where your recommendations resonate more because you have more access to data that you couldn't process before because it was too large or too time consuming? But now you're able to look for patterns and anomalies that allow you to improve your storytelling. So imagine your pitches can be a lot more targeted, more data centric, and less more about guesses, right? So
Mm-hmm.
leveraging that kind of data helps your interaction with your distributor, with your sales teams, and maybe going after different markets that maybe you didn't think was possible. So we're doing a lot of those kinds of examples in our space as well, and really pushing the envelope of not only the data we have, we're actually creating new data out of the data we have. And that's actually allowed us to interact differently with our partners because of that.
Mm-hmm. So let's go a little deeper here, Sam. Just one example, let's say account targeting, right? One of the things that sales reps have to do and knock doors and sort of take new SKUs to their accounts. What sort of data you would gather if you would start a transformation, like you're planning your data strategy, what kind of things you would gather, what kind of, information are you asking AI, and then how are you taking that back to the account?
Yeah, and I mean, it starts at the end of the day, what data do you have access to, right? And sometimes the granularity of data that you have, maybe it's too hard to work with, right? And so you want things that are more summarized. But for me, I like to go as granular as possible because you'll be able to find patterns that you may not have been able to find before. And so imagine your data is organized in a way that an LLM can understand it, right? So you can actually have conversations with it, but it understands your context, it understands your roll-ups, it understands your brand, it understands your SKUs. Right. So imagine having that ability to now target, what do you recommend I should focus on? And give me the reasons why I should focus on that. And then obviously you want to validate that what it's saying is correct. It actually understands it, but it actually gives you guidance of, hey, these are some recommended SKUs I should be pitching, and here are the reasons. And especially if it's data driven, it's not, creating data on its own or hallucinating, but it's actually using your data to give evidence. It's very, very powerful because it actually grounds your conversation on the why. And we've actually been doing this kind of example in our businesses where we are providing better recommendations to our sales reps. We focus it so they have less time finding instead of going through reports and looking at dashboards and trying to make their own interpretation. We're actually designing playbooks where it actually does provide that level of clarity that's really targeted to that account. So if that account or that location has certain characteristics that's very different from another, it'll actually highlight those things and bring it in as part of the storytelling. So really, again, it still doesn't take away that it's a human that needs to process and understand the persona that they're dealing with to say, well, will this content matter? And how do I explain it in the right way?
Hmm.
But it provides all that summary and guidance in a lot faster mechanism. Or in fact, they might not even have been able to see that
Hmm.
recommendation because the data is so vast and granular.
Have you changed the KPIs of your reps now that they have to spend less time in discovery or data sourcing or, finding accounts? And at the same time, now that you're giving more context, has that changed?
Yeah, we actually have developed new KPIs for one of our regions that we first roll out this AI assistant. We're measuring not about, before we felt there's a lot of time being spent on preparation. With the less time needed, there's more opportunities for them to spend with customers. So we're actually measuring how effective these recommendations are. So if AI
Hmm.
is giving you a recommendation and you are triggering it, we're actually measuring how often are you doing it, the impact that it's having. So these are things we couldn't measure before, but those are new metrics that are just generated based on, kind of launching this type of capability.
So just trying to understand. So sales reps have to write some follow-up notes, and that's what the AI is listening back that, okay, this was true, this was not true, or how are you measuring the accuracy of the information?
Well, in our CRM, actually, it tracks it. So if I've made, let's say the system's made these recommendations, these product recommendations, and well, for you to see what the recommendation is, you have to actually click on, almost like an acceptance of the recommendation. It'll generate the summary. So we already know that you've triggered it.
Okay,
You've read
understood.
it. And then did you apply that in the visit? Then we can also track that. And if you did, then we can also track kind of the impact as
Did we get
well.
an order
So
or something?
right? Or did it increase sales that we were expecting or depletions because of
Hmm.
that attention that you raised? And what we found was we had almost 100% adoption within the first month of every rep leveraging this capability to the point we don't even measure that anymore because it's a given. It's
Hmm.
about the impact. So we're trying to measure our recommendations. Is it getting better? And do we
Hmm.
need to tune the model to say, hey, it's not really understanding this part of our business as well. And so, well, what do we need to make changes? So we're actually measuring the model performance, if you want to call it that too.
Hmm. Coming back to the topic that we have here, transformation. If you were an owner or a CEO and trying to sort of get started, what would be a simple way, checklist sort of thing to get started? Where shall we start first and then phase two?
Well, I'd say the first thing is don't start with the technology. Don't just say, oh, we need to just buy that and we're good to go. Really start with the friction. Right? Where is your friction point, right? Especially, smaller companies where you don't have the same capital investment that you can make, or you can't make mistakes as much, right? Your margin of error is a little smaller. So, I would say, don't get caught up on we need an AI strategy and go shop for a software to solve a problem. I would flip the strip first, right? Is, hey, what are we trying to solve? Where's the most burning need? Is it we're spending too much time doing this? Or is this, is there an accuracy issue, of making decisions off of it? So find those friction points, then evaluate, well, what can we do? How can AI and data combined together make that difference, right? So that's how I would get started. And then through there, identify your priorities based on, low cost, high ROI, right? So I've done something before where I've led workshops with other other leaders is building that kind of prioritization grid, cost and complexity versus kind of your impact, right? And finding those, we always talk about quick wins, but high impact wins,
So give us
right?
like two or
And
three examples. Obviously we are all looking for that low cost and high ROI in the world. What are those two or three examples, that you've seen by your experience that we can start with?
I think productivity is the easiest one to grade. Like, where are you spending a lot of time doing?
Mm.
Is it in the finance department? You're processing invoices manually. Is it on the data side and insight side? You spend 80% of your time massaging data, grabbing data, and doing what I call data wrangling. Is that
Hmm.
part of the problem? Is it your sales teams? They spend a lot of time in planning, route planning, figuring what's my pitch going to be. Is it your creatives? You spend a lot of time figuring out what content to create for social media, marketing campaigns. Is that where you're spending a lot of time? So I think that's how I would break it down. And those things all can be easy, quick wins, right? Where
Hmm.
you can leverage AI to help solve those problems very, very quickly without major investments. Those are things I'd start with for sure. And I've seen
Fantastic.
that very hand, and a lot of it is not what I call IT heavy, where you need IT
Mm.
resources or technical resources to
Hmm.
do. One of the things
Hmm.
we do at Mark Anthony Group is we want AI to be part self-serve as well. Like, here are the tools available to you, much like PowerPoints, much like, you're not going to have to train everybody on everything about PowerPoint and manage like what's your content and your governance of PowerPoint the same way, but you provide this as a capability and
Hmm.
you give maybe office hours to help them use AI in different capacities. So whether it's, a Gemini capability, or you've got Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude now. I mean, that one's probably a little bit more technical, but a lot of these self-serve capabilities, they have their own built-in tools inside that you can easily use. And that doesn't require the same level of development, a data scientist, a data engineer to build those quick wins.
On the same subject, about educating your coworkers or your sales team, how have you sort of enforced or brought that culture of using AI?
There's a few different angles, and we're not perfect by all means. A lot of it has been learning. It's been the interesting part has been who owns the AI strategy, right? And that's another topic for another day. But I think part of it is like help. Is like we've actually set up a team that's there to actually almost be like an AI help desk, right?
Mm.
So let us sit with you, let us understand your workflow, and maybe we can recommend, hey, you can use this AI tool to do these three things, but you can do it. You don't need a developer to do
Mm.
it for you. So try to, maybe build an AI SWAT team that goes around and all their job is to help people optimize maybe the AI tool investments you've made and get more out of it instead of buying another tool and buying another product to just
Mm.
fit a certain niche.
No, I like that. I
So
think, in fact, like
have that kind of
auditing each process, auditing everything as a consultant, and then, sort of helping out different tasks in your company, right?
that's been one angle. Some of it's just like, hey, I need to do this. How do I do it? And it's, oh, let me show you or let me direct you where to get that. Have like office hours, right? Kind of lab office hours as well. And I think people are hungry. They want to, use the tech themselves in their own context in a safe manner, knowing
Hmm.
that it is safe to use, obviously with your security teams and your IT leaders making sure that what you're using is within compliance. But if it's allowed, find ways to, make it more socially acceptable to use these tools in maybe different ways. Share. We like people sharing, hey, I use AI to do this, and
Mm.
share those results back to the bigger population. It doesn't require an engineer, it doesn't require development costs. People are just sharing knowledge.
Super, super. I was just going to say that not everyone is going to afford an AI sort of engineer in house. So, I think, what's your take on that? Like, has tools been very easy to use?
Again, I think it depends on what it is. Like lot of things, everyone top down,
Mm.
C-suite to frontline worker, individual contributors, middle management, everyone should be using AI to their advantage, to their
Hmm.
workflow. There are going to be things that are going to be more complicated that you're going to have to make that investment to the next level, right?
Got
And,
it.
if we're going to go into the next question, the data layer does matter, right? The investment of where is your data, both structured data, like things from your CRM, your ERP, your sales data, your market data, that's structured, but even your unstructured data, your documents, your operating systems, your customer experience run books, even like maybe your wine pairings, and there's so many things that your unstructured data can unlock is very important. So yeah.
Just curious, for in simple language, structured data is something that is stored properly in tables and formats in your someplace, right? And then unstructured is like uploading PDFs or some files which are just there in the drive.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Now, I believe, to my knowledge, AI has the power to even read the unstructured data, right? So, we want people to start storing their data. That's the first thing, like, and then have AI read those kind of things. So, give us some examples of, let's say, unstructured data, how you can start harnessing that.
I think that's where the explosion has been is enablement of unlocking unstructured data with AI and partnering that with solving business problems. So obviously everyone's very familiar with like, the evolution of ChatGPT, now Gemini and Copilot, where you can ask questions about documents and your emails and summarize things, right, for you. I think that's very common, but what's really important is that imagine if you had a library of similar documents. Let's say it's an SOP for working in your factories or wineries or distillery, right? And you have all these documents. Yeah, they could be sitting in your OneDrive, Google Drive, SharePoint, whatever. But imagine if you had a collection that was curated and you were able to ask questions on it yourself. Like that's something you can do easily now. You can actually set something like that up very, very quickly. This is not something that in the past would take you maybe many months or even a year to build a chatbot interface with your documents. But now you can build these kinds of thematic data sets. So, hey, this is really targeting on operations. This is talking about, hey, these are my compliance rules that I got to follow. And imagine if you had that at your disposal, be able to interact with it and get information quickly, especially if you onboard new people or new partners or new co-packers, and you can share that content easily. It's
Mhm.
very easy for you to deploy those kinds of solutions. And actually, what you find, and this is why I'm talking about why data matters, is you find that your documents were not written in a way that actually AI understands it well. And so that we've seen as we've been using AI to test how well we wrote documents so that does it
Mm.
understand what we're trying to convey and improve. Hey, we need to show more detail or we need to provide more context about what that word really means in our world. And that has allowed the improvements of, how we write operating manuals and documents
Very
that
interesting.
really can empower, because then it allows you to now curate and deploy these kinds of solutions more and more across your business.
Mhm. Just one simple example here. I'll take biggest use case. The most common is, let's say, sales outbound approach, right? Like if you're just doing telemarketing and calling, wineries calling their cellar door visitors, for example, or distributors calling their accounts for a refill. Let's say in that sort of case, sales scripts are uploaded and then, people can learn or fine tune their sales scripts. How can you see a use case of other salespeople or AI helping with sort of cold calling scripts?
I see two parts. One is the data itself, right? A lot of it is grounded in like what I call structured data. Hey, data in your sales, maybe, from your CRM itself. And you want to still ground your decisions on data, right? What is the market saying? What is the performance of your SKU or competitor SKU performing, right? On the flip side, you also have a lot of insight into notes about that distributor, that partner, that customer. And being able to blend both of it together and then even having a set format that you want to work out to say, hey, this is how we want to talk. And this is how we want to break down the data storytelling. You can set those kinds of structure and allow AI to help you bring all of that together. Now, validation that it's accurate
Hmm.
is it's still paramount, right? You can't take the people out of the equation, but imagine it allows you to synthesize all that data into a format output, even if you need it into a presentation format. Hey, I need this in a PowerPoint PDF structure as well. You can do all of that now instead of taking the time to create those artifacts. You can assemble those artifacts a lot faster and then edit them as you can. And I think that's a reality right now.
I just want to add a little more importance of data, right? To my knowledge, I think the real sort of moat is the data, not the AI, right? How well, how wide, how deeper is your data? That's the way to create value and difference, I believe, right? So what's your take on that?
This is such an interesting time because data and data teams have always generally have been more back office-ish, right? They're behind the scenes doing something, or yeah, they're grinding away and trying to like wrangle data, pull data, find data, and come up with some content. I think making data now more available to the end consumer, the non-technical people that make decisions are right in the thick of things, making that a lot more accessible. What that forces is two things. One is how well trusted is your data? And so we're seeing more investments in data quality. Are you putting checks and balances in place that the data, what it's saying is actually accurate and true? Is it timely? Is it complete? Those things like that. So it's driving investments into your data and data management components. But what it also now does is it now says, hey, I have this data sitting out here in my own little OneDrive or spreadsheet in my own folder. Because it's with me, well, no one else can use that. And so
Hmm.
you're losing a piece of the pie in terms of the insights. Well, now let's get that data into a central repository of sorts that now AI has access to it, not just for yourself, but for your enterprise, for your company, for your team. And I think this is now changing how it used to be more like I'm going to keep this under, this is my data. This No, it's important that you bring the data together because you never know what connections you can make with your data that can unlock new insights, new opportunities, new risks that you might identify because now I can connect it. So I think that's why data matters even more with the
Hmm.
advent of AI.
Just one, I mean, again, can be a stupid question in your experience. So let's say we are not an enterprise customer, right? Like we are not an enterprise client. I have this account, a bar, which I know the buyer buys every Tuesday from 10 to 11, for example. I have that unique data set. Now if I just add that and make it public, and I use chat gpt and say, hey, give me insights on this, and obviously it's going to read my data, and now some other person somewhere sitting says, give me insights about this bar, will that be exposed as well because it's just out there? It was never locked in enterprise.
Yeah, again, it depends on how that data is shared and where is it actually stored. But I think that's something that you guys have to, there has to be a governance play. Is like, is this data for the organization to know? Because that information about that one customer could matter to other parts of the team, other departments as well. So there's still going to be some things that are private that you shouldn't expose. And
How
that's
do we do
why
that? It's another topic, I guess.
yeah, I mean, yeah, now you're getting into data privacy and
Okay.
security. And again, a lot of it is
Let's say, to
about,
sum it up,
yeah,
how do you
yeah.
build your data guardrails, or what's the strategy of data? If you would start to, obviously you want to keep something proprietary, so that's your value.
Again, this is still protected too. Like at the end of the day, is like I think people are worried about some of the AI tools that is that data going to get leaked out? And part of that is doing that due diligence to say, hey, is this still private data within our organization? Some of these tools like using ChatGPT and Gemini, if you're using the public versions of that, then yeah, you do not want to share and run your own analysis of your own financial data off of a free version of those software because if you read their T's and C's, they're entitled to that data and they can train off of it. So
Mm.
that's one area you can be more diligent about with your team and your organization is, hey, these are the rules around using AI on our company data. And this is where it's safe and this is where it's not safe. And these are the tools where you can do that and ask those questions. These are the tools where you can't do that. So
Mm.
those are things you're going to want to work with your IT teams and security
Mm.
teams and compliance teams to make sure that you balance that. But whether big or small, those are challenges that everyone faces.
Cool. So let's go on some hallucinations that we also have. What do you think AI can do, and what do you think AI cannot do well today, based on your experience? Obviously, the list is endless, but you can just name like five or six that comes to your mind.
Manual work, like that's just so, there's just so many things it can do. It can, again, summarize. do research. Like I use AI a lot for research and ideas, right? When you're stuck with something, it's not about, oh, it's my idea. It had to come from my brain. It's like, no. Imagine if you had an editor with you or an assistant that you're able to riff off of with ideas and run back and forth. I mean, that's something that an LLM is really powerful for, especially if it's grounded on your data, your context. It becomes even more powerful. I mean, and everyone in the organization, C-suite to an analyst to everyone can use that capability, right? So helping with your day-to-day manual tasks, research tasks, writing tasks, no brainer for sure. And again, I think the other one I talk about creatives, like you're able to create, better PowerPoints, better decks, better images, right? It's very easy to say, hey, I need to create an icon that does this to represent this. Well, before you have to go look, or maybe you have to outsource somebody to grab you an image. Well, you can now use AI to generate these complementary items that will help you with your storytelling. I think that's a no-brainer. I think where AI still is, hopefully never do, it's around the connections with your customers directly. You're still at the end of the day, it's still a hospitality industry. You're still engaging with people. People want to buy from people. They want to interact, right? So there's that emotional attachment to your brand stories. You may use AI to help you write it, to curate, to give you ideas, but you have to now bring that together and tell that story and communicate it effectively. And that's why I always look at AI and people as one ecosystem. I call it augmented intelligence. It's a co-collaboration ecosystem where you leverage the best of both to solve a problem. There's an interesting discussion we're having too is, can AI help with making products, right? Is it all about chemistry? Is it all about science? And I think people are pushing that envelope right now. That's a blurry line where can you use AI to come up with new blends, new flavor ideas, right? Can it actually analyze, formulas and things like that? So that one's a very interesting example of it may help with getting you to a certain level. I don't think I'll ever replace it
Hmm.
because we're still a craftsmanship built industry, but it definitely can accelerate or identify new opportunities if you use data correctly and AI correctly.
I want to touch base on that human connection that we all know our industry is, but don't you think that the more and more buyers, especially in commercial big chains and like bigger groups, are being forced to use data and AI in their decision making or buying? Like there is the less human, but the actual thing is made by the machine, the decision and the purchase orders and those kind of things. So if the buyers have started using this, obviously eventually, it will be less human connections because they're just being told what they have to order or look at if it's new category as well.
I can see that being a problem, but I think at the end of the day, if I don't ever think we'll get full agent to agent decision
Hmm.
making at that level. I still feel there's going to be the human layer to validate that
Hmm.
assumption, right? Could you imagine if an agent said, yeah, you should buy this many cases of XYZ, and it was due to an error based on something in the data, and you just automatically say, whatever they recommend, we're going to buy, right?
Hmm.
Or
Now I'm
deplete.
trying
Well,
to get to
it's
a new
very
sales
dangerous.
cycle where
Mhm.
the buyer is also educated, like how our salespeople know how to pitch. The buyer also knows what to buy now, right? So the buyer is
Yeah.
equally empowered. So they know, like, I'm just looking for this white, let's say, a blend from you, for example, at this price point. So the whole conversation and all that stuff goes away. But now we're just chatting something else, but the core was already discussed. You know what I mean? Like, so what does the new buyer seller sort of thing look to you like? I mean, maybe in all this 10,000 accounts or more that you have, like, have you seen like some real AI buyer users that are really using this? I mean, just one or two examples you can give.
I don't think so. Not yet. I haven't
Okay.
seen that to be at that level. I still think where we're at is, do people trust the data
Mm,
that's available to them to make those recommendations? And we're spending that time getting them comfortable that yes, the data is reliable. Yes, it's making these recommendations.
mm,
And by the way, here is the transparency of how we came up with that. And I think that's the other thing we're also trying to do is be transparent with the math, be transparent with why
Nice.
we're recommending that. Because at the end of the day, as much as I can make all these data recommendations, there's still a person on the other end. And, the relationships between those two still matter because you're going to know what matters to them that might not be in a system that allows me to make that determination. So you still need to trust, the people that are, front of house in a sense, right? To be able to have that relationship. But what it does is give them is more information to make the sale more effective, to give them the information that'll make the other side more comfortable that this is a good recommendation, not a biased recommendation. But it also allows us to gain more information back to say,
Hmm.
well, why was it not effective? Why is it not resonating? Oh, it's because of XYZ. Well, we need to incorporate that data point and learn from that. And I think those are some of the things we've learned when we've done multiple iterations of our sales assistants is the feedback we get from people using it as well as our customers. They actually give us feedback as well, and that's important because hey, I wish you would provide this level of information as well. That will actually help. And so that back and forth is very important. So
Hmm.
that's why the human element is so important because it's part of the analysis, part of the feedback cycle.
I think our next slide naturally was the same that we've been talking about, but let's just double down on a couple of things here. Any other ways this has changed? Like, how has the human side changed, or what have you retrained your sales reps? What are they focusing on in this human side?
I think it's allowed them to think differently as well, right? They're more conscious about, well, what information can I provide that could help our engine make better decisions and recommendations. And I think why we've had really strong adoption is that, even with the sponsorship level with our VP of sales who helps sponsor the first project on this was not to replace or reduce headcount. This was about giving more capabilities, more time back, so you can spend more time with more customers. And because that was embraced, they felt safe to offer more insights into what worked, what didn't work. And I think this is what's training them is like, hey, you know what? Now that we've been doing this for a few months, or this is what's not working. And
Hmm.
and when we deconstruct it, a lot of it is actually about the data. Like that data is not there, or that data is incorrect, and therefore it is making those recommendations incorrectly or overstating something. So this now provides more and more accountability of how we manage our data, the inputs
Hmm.
that we put into our CRMs and ERPs and master data. It actually matters because it can drive the wrong recommendations.
Super, Sam. I think this one I'm very interested to know. So share us some real use cases, that you are doing or you've seen people doing.
I'm going more deeper on the sales assistant side. I think we've enforced that a lot, but we are continually adding more capabilities to help our sales reps be more effective, right? But we're also doing some interesting things too, right? So we have some folks here that are, run wineries, right? So we have been working with our wineries about how do we empower our customer experience advocates in our wineries, right? When they're meeting with customers on sites, how do we provide them more information? And so what we've actually been working on is essentially an assistant for them. So let's say someone's talking about, something historical about our winery or a vintage. And imagine if we had all that information that's also been, curated with our sommelier and things like that, because we have restaurants on site as well. So imagine if we were looking at this wine and let's say they're a new sales ambassador and they're not as familiar with that certain vintage or certain varietal. And imagine having that, hey, this is curated. Our chef has said this pairs really well with these food or recipes even, right? So we're actually using that capability to help our buying experience in a non-friction way, right? So as you're talking about, hey, what's that art that's on the wall? And you don't know about it. Well, guess what? We have that information. It's
Mm.
unstructured data, but we have that information that they are now able to ask if they didn't know what that answer was. And so we're trying to improve customer experience in so many different ways that's you're not replacing a sommelier at all, but you're, someone who's in a position to offer the right insights, they can actually do that. So that's one example we're doing with the wineries, manufacturing for those in the breweries and distilleries. Like a lot of our systems are highly automated, and so there's a lot of machine data, and so we're doing more things around preventative maintenance and identifying anomalies of our machines that we can act sooner on and detect quality issues with our products. So we're spending time, I think this fiscal going deeper with our manufacturing in our breweries. So there's another way we go. And I think one of the coolest things that depends on, what industry you're at is anomaly detection with your data, right? Pricing sensitivity. Imagine having the ability to build your own command center, identifying alerts when certain things happen in
Mm.
pricing, in market trends, and that comes automatically to say, hey, something's hit this. We recommend some things here, but it allows you to act a lot quicker and also some recommendations of where to focus on. So now building those kinds of components is a lot easier than ever before. It doesn't require as much heavy lifting or coding. There's still some programming you might need to do to set things up, but it's a lot faster. There's a lot more data functions that are out of the box that don't require, let's say, a data engineer and a data scientist to have to program something over a long period of time.
Yeah. So, Ankita, I think you said there are a couple of questions. Over to you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Sam. So the question that has been asked is that most beverage brands they collect very transactional data, but very little behavioral data. So what the consumers actually liked, what they like in pairing or recorded, how do you see AI closing that gap at the consumer touch point level?
That's a very good question. There's actually some interesting AI innovation out there that allow you to get sentiment on things you pitch. Not only can you just rely on doing interviews, very classic. I
Hmm.
interview tastings. And you can now transcribe that data, do summaries a lot easier than ever before. Think that used to take days and weeks can now take minutes, right?
Yeah.
And hours. But there is new tech to almost simulate tasting, simulate emotional feedback. It's kind of crazy. I don't know how good it is yet,
Yeah.
but there is a push around. Can you use these platforms as simulation for you to test really quickly to say, are you on the right track on does this brand resonate? Does this marketing campaign resonate? And so there's ways for it to actually simulate a person. That's kind of new for brands. And I don't know how good it is yet because we
Yeah.
are starting to look at some of those in demos and things like that. But it is a very interesting capability that may allow companies to have more access to research and feedback. That's a lot faster and maybe less bias. Don't know.
Yeah. All right. I think that would be tricky because estimation of human behavior is something which is at par. But yeah, getting to the next one. So post-purchase engagement is where most of the brands go dark. So how are you using AI to close that loop between shelf, the consumer, and the brand?
I think it depends first on how much data do you have access to. And I find that some of the challenges is who shares what data with you, right? So on our side, we can't sell direct, of course, right? So we have distributors and retailers, but I don't have necessary cart level data that Walmart or Target or Costco or 7-Eleven might have. And so I have to infer a lot of other things, like can I do web scraping and grab sentiment data about my brands, about certain trends in flavors and ingredients, right? And can you use AI? You can use AI to identify trends, but in terms of like nothing replaces the real data, right?
Mm.
And so some of the tricks you could try to do is can you build proxies? Can you maybe
Mm.
get some transaction level data from retailers, maybe simulate that and kind of build proxies and kind of like project it out on a bigger market size or a brand size. Like if you're on that side of the house, obviously if you sell direct, you have so much access to that data. Where you should go is, yeah, you want to know more about your consumers. What data can I get about my consumers and stitch that together to help identify trends of where I want to go after, right? So For wineries that get to sell direct, how well do you know your consumers, the people that buy it or people that come visit?
The problem
Yeah.
is the depletion data does not come back to many of them from distributors. So I think that is one thing that maybe if you have any insights or any ways you've cracked that on without the distributor giving back the depletion data, they have some visibility of what's happening in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been building proxies. Basically, we have to build our best, like, whatever market data we can get, right? Again, what can you afford to buy versus what you may have to mine versus what you may have to use math and statistical modeling to kind of basically build what I call a proxy for that data. So let's say I don't have that market data for that metro, but I have other data about that metro. Can I create something that represents that allows me to now use the same sales recommendation engine, but use that data? Like, you have to be creative, and that's some of the creativity we are doing now, where we are trying to create our own extension of data based on what we have access to or what we may have to infer.